sign it for you. Thank you, Julio. As she was saying, going over that letter, we're taking a racial equity lens that we want to take throughout this training, and just wanted to let you know that we all are learning this together. We're all learning this together. So this is something that we're going to be putting into practice. As we know, everything's a theory, but when you practice the theory, you refine it, then it can become a reality. So that's what we're going to be doing from here on out. At this time, I'd like you to turn to your participant workbook and turn to page 11. Thank you, Mr. Paul. And we just want to take a look at some of these questions that query one. I don't know why he just should have just put question there, but query is another word for query is question. The synonym is question. So what is the difference between equality and equity? Anyone? I mean, anyone. Take one or two people who want to share. Equality and equity. Yes, DJ.
You can always count on me. Okay. Equality, treating everyone the same and giving access to the same opportunities. Equity is proportional representation by race, gender, providing the means for justice and the ability to use what they've been blessed with.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to add on to what DJ said? Well, it's only 10 of us in the room today, so we can stretch. We can speak today. Yes, Autumn.
Equality is basically, I just simplified it, like everyone gets the same. Equity is modifying those things based on the person.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. Sound like a teacher. I love that.
I want to add on that equality to be deceptive, because even though the steps, let's say, to the palace are for everyone, not everyone has the ability to climb up those steps. You know, so if I say to everyone, like in that tape, I really love that Pamela's tape. I'm going to invite you to lunch, but I live in Morocco. But everyone is welcome. But not everyone has the ability to take a plane to Morocco and travel to where I'm at. So it's deceptive. That's the way I see it.
Interesting. So Eddie's saying that equalities, some people may have more things on them that will prevent them to actually acquiring, getting that equality. Thank you.
I have one.
Can I add another one?
Yes,
yeah.
Julio.
So in our world, for instance, all of our drug programs are available to everybody. Everyone's welcome, right? And so the other day I get a phone call that there's a bed at a particular program and somebody can't get in because there's no staff to speak Spanish.
Right.
That is not equity.
That is not equity.
And so it took 2 days to get an intake for a person to get a bed. So, you know, again, a lot of programs don't have Spanish speaking on staff, you know, and that's a problem. Same thing with the deaf and hard of hearing. We have the same issues. Access is not there for everybody. And sometimes, unfortunately, some of our programs only respond to their friends, people they know, and people they have connections with. And so if DJ is trying to get somebody into a bed, and I don't know, Stephen is trying to get somebody into a bed, but DJ has the connection and Stephen doesn't. And even though Stephen called first, DJ,
Hold on.
It's not equity. It's incredibly a big problem. And so I just wanted to say that.
Yes, thank you for sharing that inside input, because we are talking about, since we all work in the field of peer work is dealing with recovery, the focus as we go forward and looking at it from that prism will help us to unpack and really get an in-depth understanding. Thank you for that analogy, Julia. Now,
I have a good one.
go ahead, Paul.
All right. Moms want to get into something like Learn to Cope. Cape Verdean mom doesn't speak English. There's no way for them to get the support that the Learn to Cope programs can do because they're not in, maybe they are now, but they weren't in last year in Spanish or Cape Verdean. So in Brockton, when I would have a mom who really wanted that support, there was no place for them to go. You know, there was no Cape Verdean speaking Learn to Cope meetings.
Good point. Good point. Here's first why you always see people from their perspective, cultures, races, or ethnicities that try to create programs that curtail or fit around them because of these barriers that have been placed in front of them. Oftentimes we may not understand why, but that is the reason why that happens. After so long knocking on doors, things happen. And sometimes a lot of it is out of people's ignorance, you know, biases, racism, all that can be incorporated. I can't put one finger on all of it, but I think with a little bit of mixture of all of that, but ignorance definitely is right up there with all of it. How about some of the underlying factors of equity? Equity. I think DJ, you read from that, and I think you read some of those underlying principles.
You mean as far as equity?
Equity. I think you was reading, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. It's something I wrote down.
Oh.
Equity. Equity is proportional representation, meaning that some people get more equity than others.
So she's talking about fairness. Those are underlying principles. And DJ, thank you for reminding me to say to y'all as participants, I know we did our work in this workbook, so she's talking about what she wrote down and what she did. So thank you for reminding me that we make sure that we will be pulling from that because I know that we have been students. Hopefully that we read the material. Thank you. So she's talking about fairness, justice. Justice is one of the underlying principles of equity, justice, access, opportunity.
Mark,
yes.
I was watching the Netflix program that has to do with the college scandal where these actors, I'm not good with names, but these actors and high power influential people with money were paying to have their kids, you know, go to these prestigious college because they had the financial means to pay, you know, to get into the side door, so to speak. And I was watching that program this past weekend, and it all came together in regards to this topic, you know, as I was reading it.
Well, that's definitely good insight. That goes back to what Julia was saying earlier about classism. That's a particular class who has money to be able to do that. You know, the rest of us, we may not have that. So we have to actually work hard because you're not just going to get in based upon, you know, trying to, you know, curtail something. So, yeah, that's exactly a good example of that, Eddie. Thank you for that, too. And what are your personal or professional experiences with equity or inequity? Who has a personal experience with equity or inequity, or I say justice or injustice? DJ gonna take the field. I'm gonna start pulling on someone. Go ahead, DJ.
I just wanted this week. So there's 5 of us. We're trying to incorporate in our community a new recovery center. And we've been looking at rentals and places, and I really want to keep it in Mashpee because we're going to work with the Wampanoag Nation. But so we went and looked at this place just for the hell of it. my friend, she's Puerto Rican and so I wanted to play you the message I got back. Is that okay?
Yes.
DJ, sorry, Ben Edgar. I talked to the owners of the property, and they want to stand at their asking price for the office lease at this time. They just dropped their price dramatically and don't want to drop it anymore. Also, they're very concerned about the members and being at the property, and they're, intermixing with other tenants, and if there'd be any issues. So that is a serious concern for them. They don't want to have problems with the tenants at the building. So let me know what you want to do. 508-776-2635. Bye-bye.
What do I want to do? I want to smack the shit out of them. See, there is a great division in Mashpee, the affluent and the not so affluent. And that, I'm saving that. And we're looking at we found another spot that would be excellent because I want it accessible on the edge of the road. So the B bus, and it's available to everybody. And then I'm looking up, and the real estate agent is the same agent. So I texted him last night and said, I'm interested in 800 Falmouth Road, and I just want you to know that what you said to me over the last rental is criminal. I haven't heard from them, of course. And so anyways, that's what it's like in Mashpee. Those people, where the Wampanoags by the affluent people were called Monigs. And I got a big fight ahead of me, but I'm ready for it.
Yes. DJ, thank you for sharing that. And I can empathize with you on that. And we see what happens when injustice or inequity takes place, the pain and the hurt that it brings up, and then it causes people to move in a certain way based upon our emotion. That's why there's a movement taking place, not just here in our communities, in our state, in America, but throughout the world. It's like there's a shift going on. So I thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Paul.
Just really quick, it's ironic because as people in recovery, we're saying, hey, we're in recovery. We're working on stuff. We're getting better. Our life is now getting different and improving in our health. But meanwhile, you don't know what your other neighbor's doing. You happily let them in the building, right? What are they doing? Oh, they're paying the rent just the same, right? You don't know what they're doing or what's going on in their place. Meanwhile, you're welcome to come in ours, and we're saying, hey, come right on in. So what's really going on, right?
Right. Absolutely. I just want to thank you, Mr. Paul, for giving that analogy. Who was it, Julie? Julie said, we experienced a very similar situation in Pittsburgh. We were told by the mayor, we do not want that population in our downtown area. Yes, I heard about that, Julie. Heard about that. Thank you for sharing. Adam, did you have something to say? No, Jack?
Yeah, Mohammed, the biggest pink elephant in the living room was maybe some 20 years ago. I'd be going up to the State House with my Latino brothers and brothers trying to raise awareness that we needed help with men coming out of prison for funds and for addiction treatment. We were losing guys left and right to overdose before the opioid epidemic, quote unquote. But we couldn't get anybody to come out of their office at the State House. And actually, a guy that I knew was a state troop up front there. When he saw us coming, I could see the concern, right? And you know, letting us know that, you know, by the way, you can't come in here with any knives or. And I'm like, man. So anyway, but what made me really sad was when people of color were dying in Roxbury, Dorchester, Blue Hill Ave, Eggleston, you know, Dudley, when they were dying there, you know, they have a drug problem, right? And then when white kids from the suburbs started overdosing and dying, we got an epidemic. So I saw it for what it was. I saw it in real time, man. I saw that you know, when those people were dying, you know, well, you know, ex-convicts, you know, they're from there. They have a problem over there. Once it started happening in Hingham, now we got an epidemic. Bitch, we got to do something. We got to get some money in here. And when the mothers got involved, that's when shit really shook up, because then they were blowing up the phones, and they had the power to vote for these knuckleheads that, you know, from the Hinghams and stuff. They're like, well, we better do something, because now, you know, people of means are starting to say, you know, that their kids are dying. So now we really, really have an epidemic. And it was ugly, and I don't forget it. And I saw it in real time, and it's disgusting, but it's what it was. You know, if you trust and believe, there weren't a lot of people trying to help, you know, people of color that were dying of addiction. And don't even get me started with the weed stores. Now you can get it delivered to your house. You know how many friends of mine I had to serious time over weed. You know what I mean? Chris Rock was right. If in America, if we could tax crack, we'd have it in cigarette machines. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it was an evil drug. It was a gateway drug. They sell that over there. Lock them up, throw away the key. 3 strikes, you're out. But now all of a sudden, they're getting tax money for it.
Absolutely.
Whoa. What, we getting money? Oh, well, it is not that bad. It's natural, right? Yeah. And I, you know, I've seen stories of people of color, you know, that are running, you know, a couple of the shops, but it was mostly white guys with a lot of money that are popping up these weed stores all over the place. It's comical. You can get weed delivered to your house. I can't get vape juice.
Absolutely, Jack.
Charlie Baker.
Absolutely, and I thank you for sharing that, Jack. We could have a whole subject on that, what you just laid out for us right there. Autumn, please.
Sorry, I was having a little bit of trouble unmuting. So I think I live in Greenfield, really small little Western Mass deal out here, and so to like some of the things I've been in long-term recovery, and I know for myself, sometimes I would really stress myself out with having to do extra to not be what other people thought that I was as a person in recovery, right? And so I know we have a recovery center here in town. It's called the Recover Project. It's in a very amazing place. And I know, you know, it's a peer run place. And one of the things that they had done is really try and engage in the community to like break that stigma down. And so I know they had done like a volunteer clean up the streets type of project, whether it was just sweeping. And, you know, I often think that like as angry as these situations like make me as a person about discrimination and unfair access, sometimes like the fight mentality comes out of me, but like that's not gonna, you present with anger, they're gonna present with anger back. Do you know what I mean? And so unfortunately, like I know for this community, like we've had to like just show them that this isn't, we had to break the stigma by showing them that that's not what we are. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that came out right, but what do they, you get more bees with honey, you know what I mean? Like, so coming at being appropriate when I do it, you know, as mad as it, I often speak about my son with a disability, like when he has discrimination and whatnot, like I want to fight people, like that's my first, but I use these opportunities to educate. And 9 times out of 10, the ideas that they had about like my son, for example, I had a teacher one time come to me. She was retiring and she had my son for 1 year and she retired after she had him. And she said, you know what, Autumn, she goes, I wish I had met you and your son earlier in my career, because it really would have changed the path and how I had done things with other students.
Wow.
Just so he has autism. So they hear that word autism and all these things come to mind. And it's really based upon like being uneducated. And so my job as a person in recovery is to educate people about recovery. My job as a parent of a disabled child is to educate people about their disability. So, and that's exactly what it is, like what Paul just said, like it's fear, like these people just don't know, you know what I mean? Like I feel like they don't know. So it's my job, my responsibility as a person in recovery to educate these people. And I'll say one more thing and then I'll be quiet.
No, I want you to talk. Go ahead.
So when I came into recovery, right, like, so it was back in the day where they essentially, so I was on probation, right? And they gave me a pat on the back and they said, good luck, we'll see you soon on a violation, is what they said. There was not as many services out as there is out here now. There was no diversion programs. There was nothing pretty much. I managed to get through my probation and do what I was supposed to do. But, you know, as we grow in recovery, right, we're supposed to find like a meaningful position in our community. And as a convicted felon and a woman, that was very hard to do. So like the jobs that came around, like people would think, okay, you can work in a school, you can work in a daycare, you can work in a nursing home, you can work, but I couldn't work in any of those places because like I had the big X on my record of being a felon, right? And so I had to work that much harder to get into a position where I could essentially build my purpose, like build my equity within the community per se. Do you know what I mean? Based upon that fact that like I couldn't go and be a roofer. I mean, I probably could, but probably is not a good idea. But or I could have gone and been a construction worker, but those aren't like the types of things you see women do. Do you know what I mean? In some. So, all right, I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. It's interesting because you and Jack gave wonderful examples, which makes me say that to educate ourselves, to learn, to understand the history of how all these things unpacked and how we are impacted and affected by it, and tend to be able to advocate as you did, Autumn. Jack talked about the disparities between the crack and the opioid epidemic. But I can remember when I went to Washington, D.C. With Moore, and we went to Capitol Hill, and these things came up in 2010. But one of the gentlemen there who worked, he was a page, worked for one of the senators, and he basically came out and said it, that it wasn't, it was affecting a particular community, and it wasn't beginning to get any voice until it began to go out in the suburbs and affect people who had some money. So even poor white people were being impacted at the inception of the opioid epidemic, and nothing was really being said. But when it began to affect influential people, the language began to change, and diversion stuff that you can go into court and everything changed to suit a particular segment of society. So I will say poor white people fell through the cracks too. But the importance that we have to educate ourselves and not move out of emotion. And that's on both sides, because when you have the knowledge and the history of something, You can speak to people who may be speaking from a position of ignorance or a position of emotion, and you can begin to educate and advocate, because we want to empathize and understand their pain. But more important, we want to push this DEI to bring about change. So with that said, Adam says education, yes. One person, so because I know I have to move on. How might equity and or inequity equity related to the availability, types, and or delivery of services within my community impact my role as a recovery coach or other peer workers? I know that's a long sentence, huh? Let me rephrase it. How might equity or inequity that's available or delivered services in your community, how might that impact your role as a recovery coach, a supervisor of recovery coaches or other peer workers?
Access to transportation.
Beautiful. Yes. And Michael, I see you raise your hand.
Access to treatment. A lot of detoxes ain't taking individuals that have a substance disorder, let's say with crack cocaine.
Mm-hmm. So that impacts your role as a recovery supervisor over your recovery coach, because someone may not have access to.
Well, the recovery coaches are getting frustrated because they can't get help for the individual like they should.
Yeah. So some type of transportation means.
Yeah, tell them you drank. Tell them you drank.
No, that
right?
I mean, they have something for you. Exactly.
I wish I could, that's what we used to say way back in the day, tell somebody, but
right.
As a professional, I can't say that to somebody.
Absolutely.
But,
right.
Absolutely. Sarah, thank you, Michael.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing with Michael for sure, because we have that issue down here on the Cape as well, with trying to get our participants into treatment for stimulants, and also finding treatment for not just pregnant women, but families as a unit. There's literally there's hardly any, and it's super frustrating, because I specifically right now work with pregnant and postpartum women, but so that's difficult.
Well, I know it is. Sarah. At this time, what I like to do, I like to pull them slides up. I just want us to look at the slides, Paul, the one with equity and equality first. And we looked at these last week. Just want to paint this picture in our mind as we're coming to a close. And so Paul can take us into our first module of the day. Pull up that slide. Just want to look at this picture. We see equality. We see equity, equality. They all three of these individuals, they have the same thing to stand on, a box to stand on. I think Eddie spoke about the stairs earlier, but they're all at different heights, so they can't each reach the tree. But when we look at equity, each one is given a box in order for them to reach their goal or that fruit that's found on that tree. This gives us an analogy, a picture in our minds going forth what equality and equity looks like. Mr. Paul, can you pull up that other picture in the wheelchair? Was it the incoming bicycle? Yes, equality and equity. I think it was you last week, Autumn. I think it was you who gave you spoke about a child that was disabled, I believe, but you gave a great analogy of it. And we see here that there's a wheelchair, there's a bike. She can't move to get on the bike, but if you give her a bike that's mobile, then she is able to do something for herself. She has been empowered. That's equity. And we see in this picture, there's more that can be taken from this, but we just want to etch this in our minds going forward. I believe that's the only picture. And I think, can you pull up the racial equity slide too?
Yes. Oh. Uh-oh.
Well, man, don't worry about it, Mr. Paul. This is what I want to do. I'm just going to read, and if we can put that in the chat, the link to the White House order, the Biden-Harris administration. I just touch a little bit on it. The term equity, as used in this particular order, means the consistent and systemic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to undeserved communities that have been denied such treatment. And then it goes so forth and so forth. Black, Latinos, people of disability, the LGBT community, you members of religion. There's a whole lot of people included in this because it covers a vast amount of people who have not received equity. And this is what we want to keep in mind going forward. So with that being said, Mr. Paul, can you take us into our next module, which is the fundamentals of supervision?
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. And so we are going to be looking at page 12 in our books. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that up here. The fundamentals of supervision. So what is your experience with these types of supervision? You know, as you reviewed this yesterday, I have it up on the screen, but it's on page 12. Administrative supervision, educative supervision, and supportive supervision. What came up for you as you were reading through these? Sarah, Michael, go ahead.
All but the supportive supervision, like the administrative supervision, the educative supervision, they really not focusing on the recovery or the client.
Tell us more.
Well, if you look at it, it's a lot of workload and all this other stuff, and making sure your payroll's on time, and this is taken care of. And then you got the support of the recovery coach role, where it's giving feedback on the work, the supervision. When you're doing supervisions, you're giving feedback. You're discussing the self-care and stuff like that, making sure that's being utilized and stuff like that.
It's a wonderful observation. Autumn.
I feel like if the administrative supervision and the educative supervision, although they don't directly focus on the clients that we're working with, I feel like if those are done in a positive manner, then it will have an effect on the people that we're working with.
What would be an example?
So let's just say, like, my workload, I'm working as a recovery coach, and our recovery coach supervisor, and my recovery coach that I'm supervising comes to me, and they're all frazzled because their workload is ridiculous and they're not getting paid for the services that they're doing. So that would be like administrative stuff. And they are behind in trainings, and like they're frazzled, like that's going to affect them as a worker if they're frazzled because all of these other things are not smoothly operating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eddie, absolutely. You know, they all, you know, what if you work towards making them all work together, right? And not separate them or compartmentalize them, as such. Eddie, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and that was a great observation that Michael pointed out. But at the same time, it's like, as a recovery coach supervisor, being keen in my collaborating skills with all departments, you know, even though I'm focused on the recovery coach part. We don't live in a vacuum. You know, we have to interact with the system, and getting the support from these other departments is kind of hopefully get a good balance, you know, versus being like this off balance. So I think collaborating.
Collaborating with other departments.
Yeah.
What else came up? So someone else. Julia.
So when I was looking at this, I think, you know, using a mix of all of this, and what Autumn mentioned is really important. But I think each recovery coach is different, and we have to employ some of these more heavily depending on the recovery coach. And I'll give you an example. The training and supervision, the training piece of it, and assessing their knowledge and skills. Some of the recovery coaches might be really strong in the boundary area, while others are really challenged with technology. And if we're sending our coaches out with this technology, and we're not training them and supporting them in that training and making sure they feel confident with that, it takes a little bit more time for that educational piece. So, I mean, we use all of it. I just think that was my thought on it.
So I'm going to tie that right back into the equity, right? We can't just give recovery coach trainings as an example, right? Somebody might be wonderful at connecting with folks, but you know, they might have a little bit more of a challenge on the technology piece, right? So what can we put in place for that? That's excellent. Someone else had their hand up. DJ.
One of the things that came up for me that I've noticed in my work experience is that when recovery centers are represented or partnered with or are mother to, I'll just use an example like Clean Slate, say, then I think the workload becomes so unbearable because now it's money driven. And I don't believe that they all understand what recovery and recovery coaching is. That's just my what I feel like I've seen.
Wow, thank you. Let's hear one more, something different that somebody might have taken from this or observed. All right, I'm going to call eeny, meeny, miny, mo. About Carmen.
I mean, I really didn't see much different from Mike, Eddie. Me personally, like I use the educative supervision. We give them their space. We focus on their knowledge. Not so much on the administrative supervision, but yeah, for me, it's the educative and the supportive supervision that I focus more on.
Wow. So thank you. As the supervisor, we're focused on educating our coaches, right? And how about the rest of the people that we work with, right? These other programs that we're, you know, affiliated with, getting referrals from other departments, right? That we're technically we're supposed to be supporting them, and they're supposed to be supporting us, right? We're supposed to be working, you know, together, you know, to support the individual and moving through the continuum, right? And then, you know, coming out on the other end on the recovery side and us supporting them and growing that, right? So it's almost like we're not just supervising recovery coaches, right? It's not just all about the coach, right? There's a whole other piece to it. And you know, Michael, the first thing you brought up was like, hey, there's all these other pieces that are actually kind of seem like 2/3, right? 2 out of 3 are focused on everything except the coaching. So, but meanwhile, the coach gets the finger, right? So how do we support, the coaches in stepping up? How do we support the programs in stepping up? Right? Michael, go ahead.
So I heard someone mention about like a parenting organization that's overseeing the recovery. We have to make sure they're educated as well. Because I've seen recovery coaches in roles they shouldn't be in. And that's not good. That's not safe. So now they're getting reprimanded for doing the job that they don't know how to do. For example, writing up a treatment plan instead of a wellness plan. So you have to make sure that the parent company is on board for this whole, and understanding that they understand the role of recovery coaches and recovery coach supervisors.
There you go. And that is it. Imagine, having every day, depending on where you work, right? If you work in a big system and you're in a little department, right, that everybody is sending people to, what if you took one coach every day that just went around making the rounds and saying hello and connecting with, the folks that are referring, that we're supporting, right? So let's go over to page 14. I'm going to
Oh, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Oh, go right ahead.
One thing that jumped out on me is, coaches are coming from so many different backgrounds and whatnot. And the term boundaries came up a little bit earlier this morning. And so I was the first one to start over in the ED at Salem Hospital. And back then, our recovery coach supervisor, the roles were really blurred. So he wasn't your, in terms of a supervisor, it wasn't like the same thing as a supervisor, say, in a manufacturing company that's overseeing their workers. And so we had some fairly new recovery coaches coming in, and it was very difficult in the beginning because boundaries will take people out of whatever kind of jobs that they're working at. And for me, working in the DED and working with the people that I do, it's something that you have to keep some really good tabs on. And Michael talked a little bit about it, but it's staying in your lane. We're recovery coaches. We're not therapists. We're not, clinicians. And that's where people can get themselves in trouble.
You just brought up an awesome example. Thank you, Stephen. Because, here we are, it's in our job description to mind and manage our own stuff, right? Meaning our boundaries, right? Biases, all that stuff. This is all part of it. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen in all other departments, right? So, back to the advocacy piece, how do we support others in letting them understand and know our boundaries, and, not to tell anybody else what theirs are, but just letting them know about ours, and that might inspire some, reflection or whatnot, right? On what's happening in our worlds, as we work together, and not to be so siloed. So, send them over there, right? And then you don't get to communicate. So that's a wonderful piece of the boundaries, really letting people, just know, and how do we do that, respectfully, right? So let's go over to page 14, and here, would somebody like to read out loud? This is according to SAMHSA over in the blue box.
I'll read. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sure. Supervision of peer workers is a professional and collaborative activity between a supervisor and a worker in which the supervisor provides guidance and support to the worker to promote competent and ethical delivery of services and supports through the continuing development of the worker's application of accepted professional peer work knowledge, skills, and values.
Thank you. Thank you. The accepted professional peer work knowledge, skills, and values. What were some of the pieces that you wrote down there at below on page 14 here, where it asks, based on the tasks, what might a supervisor and other peers, workers need to effectively fulfill their role? Well, what did, let's hear from 2 or 3 folks what you wrote. DJ.
You can always count on me to break the silence. What I wrote was that, in my own belief, I believe that you need to establish a relationship with the coaches that you're supervising, and that there should be a degree of mutuality. So it's not you're the boss, I'm the employee. I think that when you start using power to influence the people you work with, that leaves a really bad taste. And I think that, so my process would be to have a relationship, and for myself to obtain all the knowledge that I can obtain, practical and didactical, and support for myself, and share what I've learned openly and not conditionally with people. And I think honesty is a big part of it, and gentleness. In that.
I hear transparency. I hear vulnerability. Beautiful, beautiful things. Someone else, what did you have in there?
So folks that are in other areas in the hospital or in IOP or drug court, I've gotten like, don't ask him if he minds showing up on Saturday for work. You tell him, you're the supervisor. And that may be how they, go about their business in corporate, medical field, whatever. Like, you're on, that's it. This is your shift, and we're not asking, we're telling you. And of course, in my case, I know that I'm dealing with another addict, someone that is just like me, right? So I don't like people ever coming at me and that. So going about it more understanding, like, and more of a brother. I know this is like this like hurts showing up on a Saturday, man. Like, so more understanding of what they're what I'm asking them to do. It's a big ask, you know what I mean? And not going like, I'm the supervisor. I'm not asking you to show up on set. Like, it's all in how I say something. Say what you mean, but don't be mean when you say it. That's what I have to constantly remind myself. Like, if I want to, if I want somebody to have a good time, right, working with me, I don't want it to be that, I'm calling them and I'm just like barking orders because I'm the supervisor. The other people can think what they want, but I can't go about business the way they do.
And it goes to remember the principles of recovery is self-directed. What if you just put it out to the team? Hey, we need somebody on Saturday.
Yeah.
Who would be up for the challenge? And I'm sure there's somebody who's psyched to get out of bed in the morning on Saturday. Others not so much, right? So,
right. That was after I put that out initially to 8. Hey guys, who would like to step up and be of service? And it was crickets. So then I had to, yeah.
You got to make
I always want to come from that place of, is letting them make the decision instead of me. Right.
You
Definitely.
make it cool and call it the Breakfast Club, right?
Right on, right
So,
on.
How about the video, the C-Car video with TJ,
EJ.
right? So you remember that? You all got to watch the C-Car video. So what were some of the skills and qualities that he used, to work in his environment? And let's call them out. I could popcorn them out as I put them up.
Connection,
Connection,
Compassion,
compassion,
trust,
Being aware of his own biases and discovery. You mentioned that.
yes,
Open-mindedness.
what else?
Lived experience.
Lived experience.
I think this goes with open-mindedness, like even though we're the supervisors, we still have to be open to learning from our recovery coaches, because we don't know everything.
Absolutely. And thank you. And yeah, the supervisor should be proficient, as said here, right? And Mike touched on it before. Not just, overseeing and checking off the boxes, but really knowing this stuff. So that's where, like, you've been doing this work, and now, the progression onto, being the supervisor. So wonderful. So open to learning. What else?
Active listening, validation of what the person's going through.
What else?
his verbiage,
Verbiage. Yes. Now here, I know that a couple of you work in the ERs or have worked in the emergency departments. How in line are these, with the skills and qualities of a recovery coach who's working in that environment? Okay, providing options, relationships.
Oh, can we put resourceful on that list?
Absolutely.
being able to be a liaison to like psych triage.
Liaison with triage. Yes, there was that one hospital staff saying, hey, we essentially triage people. We don't have time to connect, to talk to them, right, the way that the coaches do.
Yeah.
Providing options, building relationships, education,
and being able to do all of it during a million bells ringing and everyone dying and screaming and yelling and being chaotic at the same time.
Okay, so how would you put that in a word or two?
Being able to work in crisis situations.
Okay. Work in crisis situations, and I must say that Autumn here mentioned the ultimate, which is looking at the recovery and treating people as a resource. Right?
Right. And empowering, especially folks coming up that, what I don't know is a lot. And I always love to tell newer people that they're going to hear something from you. They're not going to hear from me. They're not going to hear from Jackson. You have a unique message to carry, right? They're not going to hear it from me. They need to hear it from you. And so empowering them that, just because I've done this long, it doesn't necessarily mean that I've got I've got all the answers. As a matter of fact, it's the exact opposite. The more questions I have, but empowering them that you have something really special to offer the world, and boy, they're going to hear something from you they're not going to hear from anybody else here, and so
Right, because we are the ones with the lived experience, right? And we have that understanding. So excellent. Let's move on to the next page 15. What are some of the other environments that you had written down where you all work?
Community Health Center.
Community Health Center,
courts,
Jill?
jail.
yeah.
Where else?
Streets.
On the street, doing outreach, right? And harm reduction, right? Coaches focusing on that model. What else?
Methadone clinics.
On the what clinics, Paul? I'm sorry.
Methadone clinics.
Methadone
opioid
clinics.
treatment program.
Eddie had his hand up.
Clinical settings, community clinics.
Okay, in the clinical settings. Well, so in looking at page 16 here, I'm going to pull it up. What were some of your reactions? Like, what is your takeaway? If a couple of people can just share, why are we focusing on supervision? And what are some of the challenges of that? And what are some of the benefits? Okay, looking at page 16, where you read through focusing, the challenges and benefits, what came up for you, really? DJ.
See, you're stuck with me.
Right.
One of the challenges that I've met is in the emergency room, and I'm not a recovery coach in the emergency room, but I was a recovery ally, I guess, and I was a paramedic. So I saw both sides. And I think that some of the things you run up against there, because I've heard it myself, it's like the frustration on the emergency room department's outlook on somebody that's come in for the third time that night. And what I hear behind the lines, Jesus Christ, why don't they just do it right? And I'm thinking, why don't you get them help instead of bitching? And I still think that in this time, even though there's recovery coaches in the emergency rooms, that maybe you could get continuing education credits for them and educate them on what it's all about. My mother was a really bad alcoholic drug addict too. And she got in an accident. I took her to the hospital, and the emergency room doctor says to me, and she was wasted, and he says, why don't you just hide all this stuff? Hide all her liquor, hide all her meds in the house. And I said, look at me. I'm 60 years old. Do you not think that as a child, my brother and I did that all the time? It doesn't work. I said, obviously you haven't had any training in addiction. And, but it's true, It's like, that was so hurtful. Why don't you dump everything out? I desperately did that as a child with the drugs, with the liquor, and that didn't work. And I believe that people don't know they're being idiots until you say something like that. And then it's like, maybe we could provide some more education and compassion, even if you're tired. What when you say that one thing to one person who's already feeling really bad, why don't you do it right? Or what the hell's the matter with you? We just had you 2 times before and you went back and overdosed. And
I always tell them that if someone comes in as a diabetic, we don't refuse. We don't say, "Oh my God, here they come again." We told you, you fat son of a bitch. We told you to stop eating donuts and sugar. Now, yeah, there you go again. And now you're coming back here, and we don't question that. Someone with heart disease, we don't say, you know something, we told you, if you don't quit smoking, man, you keep coming through here. We're not treating you this time. Listen, next time you come back, we don't have the same language with different diseases. But I know that, especially early on, we're in their space, right? We're being allowed to so I play nice. And what I've learned is, Doc, what do you think? What do you think? This poor kid, like, don't you think that if you and empower them, so to help them feel like they made the suggestion, right?
Yeah.
And you see things shifting, man, in the emergency. So you see doctors coming to me, Jack, what do you think? I said, well, with his breath is hope. Look at, now I have examples after 3 years, right? That guys that were chronically homeless, I'm talking frozen beards, urine, the whole deal, coming in like that. And now they're clean and sober. And they came in every day, sometimes twice a day. And now they're clean and sober because there was a transformation that happened, right? So that they start to look differently.
There's that piece of you're having these interactions with them, and you're showing up, you're making rounds, and they will say, oh, there was this one person, and then we can have this conversation with them and be gentle and bring them information. Just at that moment, they're the recovery, right?
Right.
Sarah, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was just agreeing with what DJ said about, like growing up and pouring your mom's booze out and this and that, trying to hide it, like it doesn't work and it's silly. I think providers definitely need to be more educated, and there's needs to be a lot more trainings out there. Yeah. But I was going to say, about, the recoveries going in and out of the ER, it's kind of like, I've had similar situations with the women I work with, and, I'll constantly call and, and then they'll answer. And then it's like, they just seeing my name, they knew someone cared. And then, they took the courage to pick up that phone. And I don't know, you just never know when someone's going to be ready or hear something.
Yep.
Yeah, so we spoke of the various environments, recovery center, outreach, clinical settings, et cetera. So, we're just getting, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the benefits of the recovery coach, supervision? Julia.
What I was going to comment on was more tied into the last piece, but just really quickly, for nurses and doctors, the nurses, to renew their license, they have to be educated in domestic violence. There's a whole educational piece that's now added by DPH. So I'm wondering if something like that can be added to the renewal. It's a 2-year renewal. Instead, it might be something, I'm not sure if it's already in the works or not. I renew this year, but it's definitely hard to educate in the ER. We've tried in our region and they're not open to it. It's a lot of pushback. So it's a one by one right now.
Yeah, and that goes to what our conversation was last week. We spoke about, you know, a lot of these agencies in these settings, they don't have the experience. You know, here we're talking about crisis, and that's all they get slammed with every single day. They never get to really experience working with someone in the second stage of recovery, third stage of recovery, and on, to be able to say, wow, okay, you know, and to hear about some of these, you know, stories or some of these factors, right? You know, as DJ shared, I mean, you know, here's a 60-year-old woman bringing her mom, right? And for someone to say that, you know, just to think of all that experience, you know, it wasn't, maybe they thought it was overnight and she started last week, you know, who knows, right? Someone else, Stephen, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, so we've been out of the ED for just over a year, and yesterday was my first day back, and so I went there with Richard Zombeck, my supervisor, and so we're kind of looking at this as a fresh start. There's been a lot of turnover in the last year there, but we have a couple of charge nurses in there that are just phenomenal when it comes to SUDS issues and how to deal with the people that are coming in. And so I went in early just to walk around and kind of get a lay of the land. And within a half an hour, my stomach was sick. Seeing some of these poor men and women, and you know, and how they would be being treated. And we had some significant issues while we were out remotely, you know, trying to connect with charge nurses and nurses that we don't have the relationships with. So if one of my coaches has somebody that's going to the ER, they'll call me and I'll try and grease the skids and let them know a little bit about what's going on, so that the folks in the ED kind of have a heads up. And it was about 3 weeks ago, I had an experience with a charge nurse, and had I had the ability to crawl through the telephone line to get to the ED, I'd have been there in 2 seconds to have words with this young lady. Because one of the things that she said was, if she doesn't like it here, she can always go to Beverly Hospital. And this was a girl that I had been on the phone with the entire way to the hospital, trying to help work through her anxiety of going to the hospital because she's been treated like shit over there so many times, pardon my language. And in doing so, it was in talking to this charge nurse, it was almost like this poor girl got a target on her back. And guess what? She bolted, and she's been gone in the wind for 2 or 3 weeks. So we went in yesterday, and we grabbed a couple of these charge nurses that they get it. They really, really are advocates for recovery. And, you know, our ED is set up in pods, and we had the ability to go around and say, we're back, you know, and part of it is they haven't seen our faces in a long time, and talk about what we're looking for. You know, offering whatever we can for help, and just kind of do this in just a fresh way, like we're starting all over, and so that a person that comes in with a SUDS issue isn't sitting there for 3 or 4 days before somebody decides, oh, they have a SUDS issue, we should be calling a recovery coach or an addiction team. We're asking them to page us right away. And we'll come down there. You know what? If they don't want to talk to us right then, no problem. But don't call us when they're discharging an hour later. Mm-hmm. And the chances of us connecting with them are slim to nil.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now that, you know, we're going back from, you know, a lot of places, you know, we're going back to normal or closer to it, whatever that means. You know, and there's new staff, and, you know, there's turnaround, and even before this, the turnaround in you know, in this field, quite a bit. So that's even more so now. Any different settings? Does anybody have a different setting that you would want to comment on before we move on?
I want to comment on the clinical setting. I think one of the benefits and challenging at the same time is working within a team, resource specialist, social worker, behavioral health specialist, and the primary provider, is that they all come from different platforms as well as myself. I come from the recovery coach mentality platform, not using labels, not assessing, and all that. And then engaging them, some are willing to listen, but what I noticed, my challenge is building a relationship with them before I could speak, and not trying to educate them directly, but by modeling, what I do, because right now, some of the social workers that I work with, they are using the phrase participants. They're not using patients, and that, in the beginning, I had to explain what a participant was and why was the reason that we use participant. And then the other challenging part is that sometimes the nurses or the social worker might use phrases like drug seeking, and this particular social worker, I work closely with her. So I was able to explain to her, my language and how that language could offend, other people if they didn't know her. So being that the relationship was there, I didn't take it as she was putting barriers or discriminating against this person. She did it out of ignorance. The implicit bias was not really there. At least that's the way I wanted to see it, because working with her gave me the opportunity to know her more. So that's one of the challenges being in a clinical setting, and trying to navigate those waters is always something's popping up that it's like, some doctors don't want, like they say, we don't want those patients. So, well, they are your patients already. They're already here.
Autumn, you have your hand up?
Yeah, that's some of the challenges. I think I share that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think, so I work in an outpatient behavior clinic, and we have a community we collaborate with to try and get all of the care under one roof as a PCP and a provider and mental health treatments and whatnot. But we have a lot of probation officers from the court mandating recovery coaches. And with that mandate comes like the loss of the voluntary piece. But although it can be like challenging in the beginning, and so I've been doing this for almost 4 years with CHD, and I think it's challenging in the beginning. Like, you really have to embrace the like meeting people where they're at. Sometimes with the mandated clients, you meet a couple times with them and, bring in the whole person-centered, aspect of it, principle of it. And I've had many, this is recovery coaching. Like, I don't even, my probation officer is making me do this. You know what I mean? And then you see, once you get the buy-in, I guess, from the participant, whether it's mandated or not, 9 times out of 10, I feel like there is a buy-in, at some point. And yeah, so although the challenge is there initially, I think it speaks to the art of like recovery coaching and like, making the connection with these people that essentially gets them to open up and utilize the relationship that you've created with them.
And thank you. And that's wonderful because it ties into, like, I was going to share, to comment on Eddie, what Eddie was sharing, and that, the education of others, it could be as simple as, looking for what's strong instead of what's wrong, right? And that's why they buy in on them, because that's what you're doing, and if the rest of the system just looked at that one little piece, right? We call recovery orientation. That's all it is. We're looking at it like, hey, it's a flower and we want to water you and we want to get you in the sunlight and we want you to grow. Not like, hey, you move it and we're going to get you at the roots, right? So thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's really wonderful. And Kim is going to, take this piece and she's going to help us affirm it all and support it in moving forward. So thank you.
Fingers crossed. I was all nervous until I heard like this, how honored I am to be around such change agents and advocacy and educators. Like now I'm on fire. I'm no longer nervous, or maybe a little bit, but wow, some good work going on in this with this group of people. And I'm truly honored. So if you can all turn to page 17 in your book, and I know you all did the homework and read the definition, benefits, steps, and examples. If I could please have a volunteer to read the first question of the bottom of page 17. And then we would take 1 or 2 volunteers to give their input, their thoughts, feedback.
I'll read it.
Oh,
Thank you, Stephen.
Consider your experience giving affirmations. Which step? Recognize, select, state. Do you feel is best in terms of performance and or comfort? How do you do it? I can give an example. I run a Zoom group for recoveries on Wednesdays and Fridays. And one of my partners very often can get hung up, and this actually speaks right to the boundaries piece, but can get hung up in her own personal stuff, putting it out on the meetings. And she and I spoke last Monday because we were having a meeting on Wednesday, and she does such a great job in the meeting, but very often she talks about too much and too deep of her own personal stuff. And so I asked her to try, limiting the time that she was on it, and allowing more time for the recoveries in there. And, throughout the meeting, I was able to send her private chat saying she's doing a phenomenal job, and the meeting just ran so much smoother. And she was able to say after the meeting that she thought that was one of her best meetings, rather than making it all about herself. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that's a great example. And it sounds like you recognized her abilities, you selected an opportunity, and you affirmed. You did some affirmation. So I know that this is what you're great, what you're great at, or however you did it. But you used exactly what we're taught to do in each steps. Does anyone else want to share their thoughts and feedbacks on first question? How about Michael?
I mean, Stephen really nailed it on the head. But I also believe it's always important that you praise the individuals before you knock them down. You don't want to start a supervision by pointing out everything they're doing wrong. that's what I learned. It's a better opportunity to point out what they're doing right, and just point out what they might be able to work, not doing wrong, but might be able to do a little bit better if they did it this way. I learned very early on it's not good to just start a supervision by pointing out and tearing somebody down, because after that, that's all they heard. So that's my advice.
That's thank you, and that's awesome. And I also learned during my supervisions examples. So when I do this, this is what I gain. You know what I mean? Even in emails, really important. Come out with an affirmation and then, give an example. Doesn't matter. In our body language, it has to be, it's all affirmative. So can someone
that's where MI comes in, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Can someone read question number 2?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
How would you like to improve? What strategy, tool, or practice will you use to get better?
All right, who would okay, DJ.
What I'd like to improve about myself is to be less wordy and be aware of my tone of voice and my body language.
All right, good. Thank you for that. And body language is wicked important. I'm not a poker player, so I got to be really aware of it. You'll know my God, so I understand that. Anybody else? Yeah, Eddie.
Yeah, I put to strengthen my abilities, and I take a lot of training. I got books, I got flashcards, because that does not come natural for me. It's hard for me to stay in the motivation interviewing mode, because somehow I always derailed, so I'm working on that. That's one of the things that I want to better and hone in on it more efficient.
Thank you for sharing. MI is wicked. It's difficult. It's a skill that we always need to improve. Thank you. If everyone can turn to page 18. There is 2 questions on the bottom, and if I can have a volunteer to read question number 1.
Like affirmations, giving feedback is an action-based skill. Ask, share, check in, or collaborate. Which steps is your best and why?
Okay, I'm gonna call on Sarah. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna raise my hand.
Thank you. We're connected.
I think asking, asking the person to give themselves feedback and just to see where they're at on their strengths and on their strengths and things that they may feel that they need to improve on or may need help with. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I don't use that technique, and that's a good one. How about, I know Paul had his hand up. Paul Bowman, B, do you want to share?
I didn't have my hand up, but so do you want me to read the second question?
Yeah, please.
Or how will you continue to improve your skills? Be specific. And I put to email at the beginning of each shift to just do a quick check-in, like a pulse, like how am I feeling 1 to 5, like 5 or 1 for the day, and to be able to plan on times that we be able to think about what we want to collaborate on and how we want to do it. So that check-in, I think, is really important to feel the temperature of what I would be doing. You know what I mean?
I really appreciate you you saying the feeling the temperature. Because I'm a huge person that supervises in that way. I want to feel people's energy, and that's how I work. You know what I mean? You don't want to.
I'm sorry, Kim, I add something?
Sure.
Okay, so supervision, I've learned a lot over the years because I've done it badly, and then I've learned. And one of the things I find that really helps is really giving the power out to the person I'm supervising. Just really give them the power. They have the power, and basically saying to them, you know, what is it you did really well this week? We do that with our trainers now. What is it that you really did well? Because the first thing they can think of, because we're all human, is we think about all the crap we did wrong, you know? And so I really ask people, really tell me, think about it. What did you do really well? And the more you do this with someone, the more they start recognizing the things they do well. And then the second question is, what did you not do so well? You know, I took too long to respond to somebody. I didn't follow up. As you build a relationship, trust gets built, and people acknowledge what they did that looking back, they wish they hadn't done it that way. People will not share that unless they have trust. If you don't have trust, they're gonna go, I didn't do anything bad this week. Everything was fine. Everything was great. Did a wonderful job. And then the third question is, what is it you'd like to do better in the future? How do you want to improve? And what do you need from me as your supervisor to help you improve? Do you need to take trainings? Is there particular strengths that you might want me to work with you on? And let's think about, how do you want to improve this year? What do you want to improve on this year? And that way you're working in partnership with a person, and you're meeting them where they're at. Everybody's going to be different, but you really need to build a trust that builds respect. In doing that, people then get transparent, they get honest, and they really end up working on what they need to work on. And they recognize the real good that they're doing, not just that we're helping people, but how did you help them? And what could you do better next time? So I just wanted to add that, Kimmy. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you all for sharing. And if everyone can turn to page 19, this session, we're going to go into breakout groups. And what we'll need is 3 roles. We're going to role play, and this is going to be fun. We'll need a supervisor, a recovery coach, and an observer. We're going to put you into groups, and each group will be assigned a certain scenario. So please remember what Paul says that your scenario is to what group. And you will use the scenarios to guide your work through the process. And you'll have about 20 minutes to do this, 20 minutes to do this work. Can I have someone in the group repeat back to me the directions? Was it a little complicated? Okay.
Yeah,
Recovery supervisor, recovery coach, and role playing. Somebody's going to be an observer to point out language and stuff like that.
Yeah. Using those scenarios.
Yeah, using these scenarios. Each group will have a scenario.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So Paul is going to prepare our breakout rooms. Oh, and one more thing. We're going to take one takeaway when you get back. So the most powerful thing that you guys really dig deep on, we'll use that as a takeaway when we get back. Also on page 20, there's some feedback role play forms. You can also use that as a guide to dig deeper in your process. All right, let's go to, and it's 15-minute group. Apologize. Thank you. You're on mute, Paul. Oh.
There we go. Sorry, gang. So the groups are, group 1 is DJ's group, and you will do scenario 1. Group 2 is Autumn's group. You will do scenario 2. And group 3 is Carmen's group. You will do scenario 1 as well. Okay? So we have 15 minutes and we are about to take off. Ready?
Fine.
Hey, Mark, I really have to use the restroom. Are you able to get in the breakout rooms if you need to? Oh, you're muted.
Don't worry about it. I was trying to send them a blast. Julia had sent something in the chat. And you do not take turns, stay in your role, focus on the language. So that's what I was trying to send in the blast.
Oh, okay, great. Do you have that or do you want me to do it?
I'm gonna try to see if I can do it now.
Do you have access to the breakout rooms?
Oh, I did. Now I don't.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah, I got it.
Oh, you do? Excellent. All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Did I do that okay?
Yeah, I was trying to send you something to say. Julia has sent.
Yeah, she was chatting with me and
Yeah,
sweating.
no. You don't sweat that, because all it is she's giving you instructions, which is all good. So what I do when I'm talking, I can click it on. When someone's talking, I click it on and I look, because it's good instructions. Like she said, do not take turns, stay in your role, focus on language tone. Because
Okay,
you didn't
so
want them to switch. Yeah, so that's what she was probably trying. One of the
okay,
things she was trying to give.
so I'll go back in a room and give them that.
Well, if we can send it, I try to send it in a blast.
You might not be able to do that if you don't have host control.
I have it.
Oh, you do have host control, and it's
Yeah.
not letting you broadcast?
I'll go in.
Yeah, I know. It won't let me exchange the chat. Going in, Kim, you're gonna have to go in all the rooms. That takes time. But if you send a blast, then you can go in. It's easier when it's
Right,
like,
if everyone's watching their
everyone's
screens.
watching. That's true.
So I don't know. Oh, it's just saying, I brought up the breakout room and it's saying join breakout 3. So no, I don't have host control, so I can't do it.
And at this juncture, how much time do they have in each room?
Was it? Oh,
15 minutes originally.
Did
I'm
you, Mark, did you put a timer on the breakout rooms when you set them up?
Let me check. I didn't set them up. Paul did.
Oh, Paul did.
He gave him 20 minutes. That's too much time.
Well, you can probably give them 15 and bring them back. Or just let them know that you got, in 5 minutes, the breakout room's going to close.
Yeah.
You want to try giving me host controls to see if I can broadcast it?
Yeah, because that's too much. We don't. Let me change it. Where are you at, Miss Maria? Okay.
And I don't have my video on, so you get my picture.
Yeah, it won't.
It won't let you?
No.
I wonder why you can't broadcast. That's weird.
Yeah, broadcast won't let me copy and paste and send it. And see. Oh. Yeah, they were in the room. Paul sent them out because your module was only like 35
minutes, right? Okay.
Yeah, and then the thing, if somebody's gonna just be in one row, I wouldn't want to send them in the room for that long, because it was just for them to process, recover. Don't worry about it. That's nothing, Kim.
No, this is learning.
Yeah, the recovery, that was on us, because we should have caught the time. That ain't on you. The recovery coach and the recovery and the observer just observe, so they don't have to change roles. So we never want somebody in the room. Paul put them in there for 20 minutes. The longest I probably would have put them in the 3 to 4 minutes, going over 5 at the tops. So 5 minutes, 4 minutes, I'll be bringing them back, giving them a minute, and it's coming back. That way, when they come back, you have more time to process, because it's only a 35-minute module. And we're supposed to have our break at 11:30. They're supposed to go to lunch from 11:30 to 12:30. So I just want to be mindful of people's time, because they've been sitting in the seat a long time. So I'm even contemplating on our next training, Marianne, that people are given a 10-minute break because to sit in the seat from 9, 45 minutes is normally the breaking point where they say you give people a break. So I think a break at 10:30, a 10-minute break, because they know they're going to get an hour lunch.
You know
Right.
what Haner does is 5 minutes on the hour every hour.
Yeah, so we could do 5
Something
minutes.
simple.
Yeah, we could do, I mean, as long as it's not going to put you guys behind, either that or we add a
No,
little bit of time at the end.
You have to. Yeah.
Because people do need that stretch, for even if it's to take 5 minutes. What if they have to go to ladies' room or the men's room? You know, they need, and they don't want to miss anything. So it's good to take a 5-minute break, like at the top of the hour. But do we need to build that into the time of the training?
The only reason why I don't think we need a 5-minute at the top of the hour, because you get a lunch break at 11:30. So if you had one 10-minute break around the 10:15, 10:20 mark, right? When you come back, you got that whole hour to do. Everybody can make it to the hour because you know you're about to have a whole hour lunch break. And that's my thing. You give them a 10-minute break, you know, because they've been sitting from 9.
Yeah,
So
because
9,
the training isn't, you're right. It's only 2.5 hours in the morning and 2.5 hours in the afternoon. So give them a 10-minute when they come back at 1:15 or 1:30 at the halfway mark, or maybe even, what is it, 2.5 hours? So an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Give them a break for 10 minutes to go and get coffee, use the restrooms, maybe go outside, poke their head outside, take a quick walk around their driveway or something.
yes, whatever they choose to do, it's to allow them to stretch. Yeah, because it's a long time for people, and that's what I'm seeing, you know. So just going forward, those small things. And Mr. Paul, we might have to call them back shortly because their break is actually at 11:30. They were sent to the breakout room at 9 for 20 minutes, and I got a 15-minute module to do, which I'm gonna have to cut that. Because we got to be respectful of their time because they've been sitting a long time.
Kim, can you rotate through the rooms and, you know, and let them, you know, just rotate through the room, see where they're at. And when you come back, we could send back a blast to say, hey, looks like everybody is almost, you know, so.
I can't get into, when I go to leave, it says leave meeting.
Okay, so.
Yeah, Paul, you're gonna have to send her into a room.
Hold on, Kim, I'm gonna move you to, you're in room 1, so I'm gonna send you to room 2. Yeah, that beginning part was a little longer. The affirmations piece. That's all right.
No, I thought it went all right. It's just going into breakout room. I think she was fine. I think she was fine. The time.
Let's send you to 3, Kim.
You're muted.
Yeah, she extracted good feedback from people. I heard some good stuff, so I thought that was fine. The breakout rooms is only like I would say 3 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes at the tops. They process, you bring them back because there's only one person. You're not switching roles, so you're staying in the same role. So
one more group.
Group 1.
Good job.
It's going well. It's going pretty well.
Man, I didn't know that DEI section was that long.
It's 20 minutes. Yeah, it was perfect timing. It was perfect timing.
No. I'm talking about what I got to do with module B.
Oh.
It's like a whole hour.
Really?
But it's funny. We used to doing that in the RCAs, our modules.
Talk to us, Kim. You're muted.
They're good. The last group I said a minute because the other had 2 minutes and it was down a minute. So they're aware.
Yeah.
All right, so let's give them.
Paul, you got the evals after this? Or what is
Yes.
this?
Yes, but you're doing the snapshots.
Yeah,
which,
yeah.
You know what? We're good because it says 2:05 time elapsed, so we got 5 minutes. Technically, for Kim's piece, and at the end, that 10-minute piece for the evals and the closeout and whatever, that could be a minimal piece.
Yeah.
Because the closeout, the proper closeout where everybody talks about their experience and whatnot should be at the very end.
Yeah.
Day 2. So, what were the takeaways? What are the expectations, etc.
Yeah.
How are you going to put this into action?
Absolutely.
Something to contemplate because they're coming back on part B, so we can't totally, tidy it up. All right.
Absolutely.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. There we go. 15 seconds they got. Go Kim. Go Kim. Go Kim. Go Kimmy. Go Kim.
Ooh. I goofed a little. Yay. Awesome.
We're back and we're live.
Awesome. So we're gonna have DJ's group from group 1 and scenario 1. If we could have one person just give us some feedback, the best thing that you discussed in that group.
I was the reporter, so I can give it a little bit.
Awesome.
It was DJ was a supervisor. Jack was the recovery coach, and with the problem with the HR stuff was basically being able to let them know that it's okay to do stuff, work, and give them some real concrete, like doing the stuff on the bus is above and beyond. You should probably be doing your HR stuff at work, right? Not on the bus, because on the bus is your own time. And the other thing is just she put herself in his shoes, saying, I can remember having, to do this stuff too. And it was really difficult trying to navigate that, and just to give them some skills. Like, do you need headphones, if you're doing stuff like this, or what kind of thing we can have, or if you think this is really too much, maybe let me know, so we can even talk to management about how we could make this easier for people so it's not so overwhelming, because there is a ton of HR stuff. So they were really good at all that. So that was the takeaway.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And how about group 2 Autumn, scenario 2? Who wants to give us some feedback in there?
So I can just give a brief overview. So I'll just preface that with so we don't know the people who we had done this role play, and that's exactly what it is. It's a role play. If it was a real situation, we would have some background probably with these people, and you know what I mean. So with that being said, it went fairly well. There was a lot of ideas. Julia was the person having some email problems, and she had brought up an idea, a solution to maybe take a training on email etiquette. And one of the other things we had talked about is just being, when we give the affirmations to people, is just be really specific about them. Because I know for myself, Autumn, you're doing a really great job. I need to know specifically what I'm doing that's a good job, because if I don't know specifically, then I'm wired differently.
I'm right there with you, my friend. You're in the right group. I love that you brought up email etiquette, because I think it's a ton of our responsibility as we're talking about computer skills. Like, you might have the best coach in the world that knows the 3 pillars, that knows how to manage their own staff, ask good questions, but they might not have the tools to get them to the professional development that is necessary to grow in this field. And as supervisors, as leaders, it's our responsibility to teach and educate and help and find the blind spots and direct people to where to go to get those assistants. So I love that you talked about that. Thank you.
Kim, real quick, I had a doctor say, Jack, on your outcomes notes, you put this guy ain't seen the ball since the kickoff. What's that mean?
I don't know what that means either. I'm sorry.
In other words, the ship has sailed. He hasn't even seen the ball since the kickoff.
Oh,
so he doesn't have a clue.
Oh my God.
I had to sort of spell it out, and I was using Dorchester language, and the surgeon was like, yeah, I'm not following, but it was just funny. Anyway.
That's great.
Before you move on to the other group, I would like to say that I was the recovery coach supervisor, and I picked the email scenario first because I felt that was less threatening than the language and attire. So I felt that coming with that, or I said, well, there's other things we would like to talk about. I would like to talk about, but let's just start with this one, and we'll add as we continue to improve. And also, one of the things that I do often is I ask permission for feedback. Even in groups, that's one of the rules or norms of the group, to always ask permission to the person you want to direct, a feedback to, because sometimes people are not open at that moment, and it could be taken very, very wrong. But anyway, that's what I had.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And believe me, telling someone about their attire or having that conversation is extremely uncomfortable. I've had to have it. It's not fun. So Carmen is in breakout number 3 and scenario 1. Who wants to report on that?
I'll report on it. Sarah was the supervisor and Mike was the recovery coach. Sarah just went right to it. She actually did great. But one thing she did miss was she didn't start with the affirmation, but she did pick it up right after, and she did end up giving Mike an affirmation. She helped him find the solution, which was great. And one key takeaway that I got out of it, it wasn't from the group, it's just what from Eddie just said. Asking that permission. That's new to me. I've never asked permission. I just gave it because I figured, this is, I'm doing something nice. I'm giving you a nice feedback. I'm giving you affirmation. So I'm just gonna give it to you, but I have to be aware of that. So thank you, Eddie, for that one. But yeah, no, she did great. She did what I would have done, sit down, find a solution, thank them for the great job that they're doing. So I don't know if Sarah would want to add more, but.
No, thank you, Carmen. Yeah, I after we found the solution and everything, then I was like, I forgot the affirmation and something I have to work on.
And that's great that you notice it, because we're not box people. We don't fit in boxes. So one person can be good at one thing. I'm really great at affirmations. I'm not good at other things though. So and sometimes I zigzag through these characteristics of supervisors. So, and I also like that you had a solution. So often that's missed in supervisors. So you go there with a problem, or you have a problem, and then there's, okay, well, I left there scratching my head with no solution based or no action plan, or how are you going to fix this, or anything to those matters. So that is awesome. And thank you for touching on that. And now we are going to move on to Mr. Mark has supervision snapshots. Thank
Before you
you
go
all.
on, can I just check in real quick?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. I just got knocked off the computer, and thank God I have two. I was like, trying to get back on again. I just want to say a few things about feedback, because I've done a lot of training on feedback, and this is probably one of the most difficult things to do as a supervisor. And so what we realized in doing this work is that sometimes asking permission, most people are going to say yes. Even if they want to say no, they're going to say yes. Just put yourself in their shoes. My supervisor says, are you open to feedback? What am I going to say? No. My supervisor looked at me like I had three heads. I mean, seriously, I'm about to give you some, so it's about relationship. It's about building a relationship of trust. And then as you, not at the moment that you're going to give feedback, do you ask for permission, but you ask that when you first meet the person and you talk about what feedback means. And you can say, I'd like to get feedback from you as well. And so you provide a moment in time in your supervision for them to give you feedback too. So if you're not willing to get some feedback, then you shouldn't be giving any. It's that simple. And so relationship is incredibly important. There are, when you connect with people and say to them, I have some feedback for you. That happened to me. I went to, because I use this all the time. I use myself as an example. When I say I had trouble with doing this or doing that, with emails or spelling or whatever, then I need to give my recovery or my recovery coach, I need to give them resources. I need to tell them, how did I, if I had that problem, how did I fix it? How am I working on it? To say I have that problem and not giving them resources or showing them because what is a peer all about? A person with lived experience, we're sharing our experience. We're sharing what we've learned. We're sharing our resources, and we're a resource to them as they are to us. So really important that if you're going to say, I went through that too, then be willing and able to say, how did you address it? How are you dealing with it? And so the other thing was speaking on the phone. When folks are driving, because I've done it, you send text to Jack Harper, and it says, what would you like to say? And I'm like, okay, call me right back. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood, period. And then he gets it, and it's all jumbo mumbo because the spellings are incorrect. And sometimes people have said some really nasty things by not checking the spelling. So really important. Don't just send something you spoke into a phone for. You have to go back and edit it, the spelling of it and the punctuations. And this is all that we learn how to do as professionals. So this is important when you're giving feedback to people. Make sure you give them feedback you have experienced. Give them resources they can use that you've used. And so I put in the chat Grammarly. Grammarly app can be put on your email, and it can be put on your Word document. And it edits everything. The words come up in green, and then you just click it and it shows you what you should have done instead of what's there. And it is like magic, and it is the answer to all of that email craziness. And then who hasn't sent a reply all when we wanted to send a reply to one person? And so I had to learn, how do I get that email back quickly? There's a certain amount of time you have to be able to get the email back out of there. And so it's important for you to learn how to do that. For those of us who do things quickly and aren't checking things right away, that's an important thing to learn how to do. So that's why I wanted to share that. What, Paul?
Unsend.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish there was an unsend.
Or how about checking who it's going to after you hit go, right? Oh, who did I send that to?
I know it's painful and embarrassing, so be careful what you write. Also, the last thing I want to say is all of your computers can be taken in by the court. All of your computers can be pulled into a case. Everything you have on that computer can be public. So be really careful. If you don't want it on the 11 o'clock news, you shouldn't put it on your laptop. That's simple. Or have something else you do it on, but not on your work laptop. Okay, so that's it for me.
And I have had my all my emails subpoenaed by legal services when I worked at THCD. So you're right.
And thank you, Julia.
I had mine pulled as well.
Wow.
That's not fun. Thank you, Julia, for saying that as well, because early in my supervision, supervising coaches and facilitators, I even did a little bitty training on who to copy, how to blind copy, when to keep organizational structure, when to contact my boss or his boss, or you know what I mean, always copying me, what you know what I mean, and all those things that people that never had jobs needed to learn, the basic email etiquette. And I did a little itty bitty training on what to do, and I think I need to do a refresher soon. So in any event, we are turning over to Mr. Muhammad, my friend Mark over here.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. For a minute there, Julia, I didn't even notice you had two screens up, and I thought you was giving yourself feedback, but now I understand. I just saw that. Okay, listen. To be, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know we're coming up on that hour for your lunch. So this next module we're doing is Recovery Coach Supervision Snapshots, and it is exactly that, a snapshot. So what I would like us to do, turn to page 21, and if I can just have one person read that snapshot. Let me see, because I can't see everybody. You see anybody's hand up?
I'll read.
Oh, who's that?
Sarah.
Oh, thank you, Miss Sarah.
Am I reading in the little bubble?
Yes, in a little bubble.
Okay.
I know we already did this exercise, but for homework. But yes, please read, Miss Sarah.
Okay. In some environments, coaches don't feel like they have a voice. It's my job to help them build confidence in themselves, their abilities, and value.
Okay. What did you relate to? And you can answer this, Sarah, but it's open to anybody else. What did you relate to in reading that snapshot, and why? Anyone? I know we were just sharing about different environments people worked in.
I think so. Like one example, I guess, would be pre-COVID, we used to go into the OB office often because we work with pregnant women, and we have to really advocate there for ourselves and for our recovery. So, building confidence in the recovery coach that I supervise, to have that voice.
Absolutely. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges for that person when they don't think that they have a voice, and to help them build confidence in themselves and their abilities and values? What is a challenge that you think that you have?
Well, I know when we talk about it, she says, she's just really quiet and it's hard for her to speak up. But when she's passionate about something, she definitely does, so she does find that strength. When she's really passionate about something, she will speak up about it. When we try to, in different meetings and different supervision, talk about it more and like what we can do to work on her being more comfortable talking to those providers.
Mm-hmm. Look at some of their fears and stuff. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. I think I heard someone say that last week. It might have been you, Steve. We don't know what we don't know. Sometimes we don't know we have a voice. Sometimes we may not have enough information or knowledge. So just professional development will assist that person. That gives you confidence. Once you done learn something, your insight, is open now, so that helps out a whole lot. Who would like to read the next scenario on page 23? I get my screen to move. I can't see that here. I get. Let me see. Okay. Yes, because we're on page 23. We can read this. DJ, was that your hand up? Go ahead, Miss DJ.
Okay. I thought we were going to have it on the thing. Okay. Boundaries are always going to be a thing. I tell my coaches to keep someone else in the loop, so there's more than one set of eyes and ears on every situation.
What did you relate to, and why?
Well, actually, I just left my job because of this. I should have had someone in the room with me, but addressing a really minor, silly situation, my supervisor told me that my new job was to be her assistant and not on the floor being a recovery coach. And I just suffered such humiliation because of a disagreement. And I said, I'm really upset about all this. And she said, you can go home for the day. And I said, well, you know what? I'm going to do you better. I'm going home forever. And I left because I have spoken to other management members, and I have not had any supervision. And so to have that, and whatever I do, and I said this, I go to her, I said, whatever I do 110%. So when you evaluate me and you say, I'm only given a 75% because that's what I learned to do, I said, I'm going to give you 70% of the work instead of 110. And not being heard, because I mean, every response that I gave to try to institute a conversation was shut down. And I left, and I go, you know what, I'm not happy with this at all. And this is not, to me, how a supportive recovery center is going to be. And maybe I'm super sensitive because I am an addict in recovery, but, you know, maybe I take things too much to the heart. But if you know, and just other comments that I address, like prejudice and sexual harassment in the form of verbal disgusting comments during our meetings by one particular staff member, and I hear, well, that's just how he is. And I talked to her and I said, well, Ashley was talking to someone else about the new civil rights movement when everything was going on, and she came into our conversation uninvited and said, well, see, I'm colorblind. I don't see color. And I go, you understand that's really racist. And she goes, no, it's not. I've even dated brown men. And I said, that doesn't make you not a racist. And so anyways, I realized between her and the person that makes the terrible sexual comments, I won't even repeat it. It's so disgusting in public. That how do you talk to people that are in a position of supposed to be understanding, and yet they don't get it?
You know something, DJ? As I'm listening to you, I noticed you didn't have anybody extra eyes, no one else to support you in that role, in that position, and that's why these trainings that we're doing, BSAS is putting on so important. So people are placed in position as supervisors, and that's what you just talked about, being able to receive affirmation. If you're a supervisor, being able to ask them questions about how they felt, that you dealt with them. So one thing I try to take from trainings when I hear other people and hear what situations you have went through, and I hope everyone does the same thing. We learn from one another. So when you're placed in a position of being an authority over somebody else's life, that you remember where you was at. And I believe in the golden rule, to treat others as you want to be treated as well. And I think that goes along ways. I mean, I feel pain just hearing that that's how you were treated. But this is a lot that's going on in certain environments that recovery coaches are working in. And hopefully that this can end right here with great recovery coach supervisors who will also manage up to go and be that buffer in between recovery coach and administrators and other and people who are in these particular environments who may not understand our role. So I thank you for sharing that. And who would like to read scenario 3 to bring us home? Who do I get? Who am I going to pick on? Who am I going to pick on? Oh, you know something is so short of a Miss Carmen.
Okay. Take the time to understand current HR rules, regulations, process, and be proactive in terms of advocating and adjusting them for potential RC realities.
So, what did you relate to and why?
This is one of, well, I need to brush up on this. Honestly, like I really do. But usually when I'm dealing with when I'm supervising an RC and they do have human resource questions, like I always go to my boss. You know, like I always try to find the answer for them, but I should be I should understand this and know the HR rules and stuff that pertain to the RC. So
Carmen, I thank you for being transparent, because oftentimes we work in environments we don't a lot of times we don't even know the mission statement. We don't know the history of the organization, its inception, who created it, why it was created, what was going on. All them things pertain to the character and the makeup of the organization, where now if people who are over me are in there and I'm managing up, I can call them to the mat in the best manner that I know how. And also promoting recovery coaching, because it fits right in with the mission statement. And when we can get on that same page, it helps me do my job. It helps the recovery coach to do their job, and it helps the recovery that is under the recovery coach to be able to receive the services that they need. So I thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anyone have any questions before we move on to evaluations? Okay, Mr. Paul, take us to the evaluations.
All right, so you are going to be, if you look on the very last page 24, you're going to receive an email in the next couple of days from Marion that will have exactly this, and that will be your evaluation. Okay, so make sure you do that. And there's going to be one after every section. So there's going to be one for module A, which is this one that we're completing right now, and then one for this afternoon, and then one for Friday morning and Friday afternoon. So just look out for those.
Yeah, I'll be sending those I'll be sending module A out right after this wraps up, and then you'll get B this afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you, Marion. Thank you.
I didn't realize you couldn't do it on the phone, Paul. I tried to do the, so Marion cleared it up for me. I have to do it on the laptop because my screen, it didn't enlarge enough so that I could, put my feedback in for the previous, I'm sorry, I'm on last week's
So it's probably similar, yeah. So thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that up, Jack. When you get it in the email, and you're on your computer, just click on the link and you can do it straight from there. So thank you for bringing that up. And now we're going to launch one last poll. So here, which of these resources or learning opportunities can you use or apply immediately in your work? Okay, which of these resources or learning opportunities can you immediately apply in your role as recovery coach supervisor?
Infamous, dear God. Affirmations and feedback.
All right, couple more folks. Dun, 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 dun. And here we go. So supervision types. Actually, the winners are the peer knowledge skills and the affirmations feedback take the lead. And then from there, we have the equity information and those photos. So I'm sure you're going to be sharing those, on your Facebook feed, right? And showing it with your staff and whatnot. From there, we have information about the environments. And now we're, being mindful and okay, there's, slightly different skill set, that might have more emphasis in one environment over another. The DEI glossary, by speaking about language. And then we have the peer worker chart and the supervision types. Yeah, and the worker chart really shows, the different environments. And I love how people, earlier we had the conversation about, language and what are the roles that we're defining here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. It is 11:32. This completes the Module A portion of the Recovery Coach Supervisor New and Improved 2021. So much fun training. And we're going to do Part B, Module B at 12:30. Okay. So thank you so much. And